Alright, the BHL movie review recordings at strange times continue. I just got back from the gym, I'm very tired, but that's not going to stop me from talking about Denis Villeneuve's latest film, Dune. A lot of hype behind this one, a surprising amount actually, considering I feel like Blade Runner 2049 kind of went under the radar a bit in terms of mainstream popularity. This one I've had a lot of people telling me like, yeah, I'm going to go see Dune this weekend, so I feel like it's shaping up to be a pretty big event. So, let's talk about Dune.
If anything happens, will you protect Paul?
With my life.
And I'm gonna go non-spoilers, and I think I'll stay non-spoilers for the whole thing. There is a couple of stuff that I want to talk about that isn't specific plot points, but could be considered spoilery in a sense of the criticism. And so before I do that, I'll warn you, don't worry. So, Dune. I was very excited for this film. Denis Villeneuve is obviously one of the best filmmakers presently working. Prisoners is an excellent film that comes to mind, but lately he's been on a bit of a sci-fi trajectory. We had Arrival in 2016, absolutely phenomenal film, and then Blade Runner 2049, also a phenomenal film. Sci-fi films that are characterized to me by how visually stunning they are, how much they make you think, they're very thought-provoking and stay with you for a while. And also they're very interesting stories that are complicated, but not in a way that makes them not accessible, in a way. They're complicated in a clever way that still makes sense and is followable, you know? And Dune, I would say, follows in that trend. Of those three films, Dune was probably my least favorite, but it was still very, very good. I really only can think of a couple of things that I had a problem with, but for the most part, this film delivered pretty much exactly what I was hoping for, and I would highly recommend it, especially seeing it in the cinema, and that's the big thing. You could expect it if you've seen the trailers and if you're familiar with Villeneuve's other sci-fi films, but this is a cinematic experience. Almost couldn't get out there. A cinematic experience, like, first and foremost. In fact, and I'm saying this is a good thing now, although it ties a bit into one of my complaints later, but this felt more like an experience than an actual cinematic story, if that makes sense. Visually speaking, it's absolutely stunning. The color palette isn't as interesting as, say, in Blade Runner 2049, but it's still shot excellently, and still, I mean, you know, Blade Runner 2049 has like some of the best use of color in any film in recent memory, so that's not like an insult saying it's not up to that level. The use of color is still fantastic. The scale, the sense of scale throughout the film is also really good. You really get an idea of how massive certain things in certain scenes are, which helps to make it more tense and crazy when certain things happen, which again, I'm trying not to spoil. There are some gorgeous shots in here. Visual effects wise, I mean, everything is flawless. Like there's never anything that takes you out of the film, immersion wise, visually. It feels like a complete world, very well designed, and yeah, it's something you definitely want to experience on the big screen. That mixed with the music, the visuals, everything, you definitely want to see this in the cinema. I think it's releasing the same day on HBO Max. Don't watch this on HBO Max. I mean, obviously, if you can't go to the cinema, then fair enough. But if you can go to the cinema, I would definitely recommend that. Everything about the film contributes to that experience side of it, as well as the visuals. The runtime, the pacing of it, another reason you should see it in the cinema, it really is a thing you want to get absorbed in and sucked into this world and just live out this very epic feeling story. Like, yes, it is a very long film, and at times, maybe it can feel a tiny tedious, like a couple of times, but in general, the runtime felt very justified in the sense that it contributed to this epic scale feeling of the film. There was reason to it being that long. It wasn't just that long for the sake of it. On the experience of it as well, I really loved the film's world. I'm not familiar with the source material, the book, the previous film. I went into this blind, pretty much. And I really found it super intriguing, this futuristic world that has elements of, like, present-day Earth, which was, like, way in the past Earth in this world. Like, at one point, just some dude has a bagpipe. Like, I don't know. Stuff like that was great world building, that there are remnants of that human culture, and yet it's still very futuristic. And there's also some very olden time feeling stuff, so it feels like we're so far in the future that it's actually even, things are so advanced, and I feel like I've seen this in something else that I can't think of it now. Things are so advanced that they even go back to like more kind of simple seeming ways of doing it, even though it's way more advanced. So it can have maybe even like an older feel to it, even though it's a great blend of like futuristic and then kind of older traditional feel. It was just an excellently produced world that was very immersive, and everything contributed to it. The costumes, the sets and locations, the way it's set up, like the politics of it, it's very interesting, and that the world building I thought was fantastic. And that is the main thing about this film. It's a really cool experience, and it has great action scenes, cool like technology, good performances all around. Everyone's good in it. This was, of course, like a bit of a meme that it had this enormous, crazy cast, and everyone's great in it. Timothée Chalamet, Josh Brolin, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa is really fun. Quick reminder here that if you're enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe, and check out my podcast, The Poorly Planned Podcast. All right, back to the vid. Some of the acting, not even the acting, some of the dialogue, a lot of it doesn't feel realistic, you know? But I'm not saying this as a complaint. It feels almost like Shakespearean at times, minus, you know, like saying it like Shakespeare, like doth thou, whatever. Just in the sense that it's this very dramatic, and every line, you know, there are a couple of joke lines, but most of the lines feel like they're very, like almost stage play, like delivered, and there isn't like a lot of subtlety in the dialogue. But I felt like it really worked for this film because it's going for that epic feel. Yeah, then we come to really my only complaint with the film, which would be the story in general. And this is where we get a little bit spoilery. I'm not going to go into specific plot details, but I'm going to say something about how the film is structured that can definitely be seen as a spoiler. So if you don't want to know anything, if you haven't seen it yet, feel free to click off now. Very good film, with a couple of complaints I had, but very good film, totally recommend it. So yeah, click off now if you don't want to know anything, although it's mildly spoilery. And I think this has sort of been all over the place with like headlines. But anyway, you've been warned. So this film is a part one. It is the first part of, I'm assuming they're making a second one. If not, that's kind of sad. And maybe if I had known that going in, and maybe I should have known that, maybe I haven't followed all the headlines, maybe it wouldn't have annoyed me as much. It didn't annoy me, but it wouldn't have stuck out to me as much that this feels really incomplete, because it is a part one, and so it doesn't feel like its own contained story. And while I thought pacing-wise it was good in the sense that, you know, even though it's very long, it didn't necessarily feel that long, like I wasn't, you know, checking my watch. Pacing-wise, it's a bit weird in terms of story structure and satisfaction in a story and conclusion. So overall, when it ended, it just left me with kind of this feeling of like, okay. You know, which is a shame for something that was so epic, and if it had, I guess, stuck the landing a little bit more in that moment, it would have really resonated more, because then when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, but it did have this great moment and these great aspects to it. And because it sort of just ended on that, like, little fizzle, I was like, oh, I see, okay. Because I saw at the start it said Dune Part 1, and I thought it was, like, going to be, because it's such a long film, they sometimes do this. Didn't Blade Runner 2049 do this? They have, like, chapters in it where it's, like, Dune Part 1, and then almost like Justice League Snyder Cut did, and, you know, other films have done. But no, it meant, like, literally, like, Dune Part 1, and then Dune 2 will come out. Dune? Hire me, Warner Brothers? So yeah, and that overall, it does, not just the ending, but it does play a little bit into the structure of the film in general. It does just feel a bit strange, and because it doesn't tie together all that well in the end, or at least in all that satisfying a way, when you're looking back on it, some of it might feel a little meandering, or like you could have sped that segment of the film up. And it's missing that, like, standout moment, or rather structure that draws the whole thing together, you know? I don't know. Again, maybe this would be different if I had known going in that this was part 1 of 2, but because it caught me off guard, that sort of did bring it down a bit for me. And my other complaint, I would say, I guess I didn't really emotionally connect that much with the main story. Like, it was interesting. I like could follow it, and I found sort of the politics of it interesting, and Timothée Chalamet's arc. It was basically like if I was reading it, it's a very good, compelling story, but I struggled to get attached to any of the characters, really, like emotionally, and I think that maybe comes down to, you know, the dialogue being a little bit overdramatic and not realistic feeling, which didn't really take me out of the film, but it did make it a little harder to connect with the characters for me, at least. And I guess the performance of Timothée Chalamet, I thought he was great, but I never really emotionally resonated with him or his arc. So that's why I would also say it was lower than, like, Arrival, for example, because Arrival also had, like, quite an emotional impact, and this one didn't as much for me. But still, I mean, overall, I thought it was a really, really good film. And yeah, because it's a little unsatisfying doesn't mean the whole thing is poorly paced or just, like, feels like a nothing. It doesn't. It's just a little bit of a weird note to end it on, I guess, for me at least. And the fact that I didn't super emotionally connect or have any big emotional reaction to it also doesn't mean it was poorly acted or had bad writing or bad characters. It didn't. It was very well written, and it had good, interesting characters and good conflicts, and overall it was a very epic, cool experience to see it in the cinema, especially visually speaking. It was a tremendous experience. So I would wholeheartedly recommend seeing this, especially in the cinema. I'm looking forward to Dune 2. This pretty much gave me what I was hoping for, I think. Like, this is what I was expecting it to be. And that's what it was. If you watch the trailer and you think that looks like something you'd be interested in, that's what you're gonna get. That's the film. So yeah, I'll give Dune an 8.7 out of 10. I saw it yesterday, so maybe my thoughts will change. I don't know. But currently I'm sitting at an 8.7. So, those are my thoughts on Dune. What did you think of it? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, my TikTok at BHLHudson, check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.